There's a sound a creek makes before it floods. Not louder, just different, heavier underneath. I heard it once and stopped walking. The old man ahead of me had already stopped. Neither of us spoke. 40 minutes later, that crossing was gone. I never forgot that. Most people today open an app, but there are 10 skills I've carried out of these Appalachian mountains that no app can replicate. Skills I learned from people who are gone now. Number 7 will change how you think about fire forever. And number 2 is the one most people will argue with, right up until they understand number 1. Subscribe if you want the kind of knowledge that works when everything else doesn't. Let's count down. Number 10, reading the creek. People see a creek and think water source. Mountain people saw a creek and read it like a morning paper. The color tells you what's happening upstream. Gray-green means clay disturbed, pale milky means limestone runoff after heavy rain. The sound tells you the volume and velocity of what's coming, sometimes hours before it arrives at your crossing. Watch the foam. Foam that collects on the wrong bank means the current has shifted, and shifted current means something changed upstream. Debris tells you whether that change was gradual or sudden. I was taught to look at the sticks moving on the surface and compare them to the deeper pull. When they move at different speeds, the water is not done changing. Your weather app might say 20% chance of rain. The creek already knows a storm came through 6 miles back. Your phone can't smell what that water's been through. Number 9, bark reading. Moss grows on the north side of trees. Everybody's heard that. Half the time it's wrong, and following it will turn you around. What works is reading the whole tree. Moisture on the bark face, lichen color and density, and how the root base sits in the ground relative to prevailing drainage. I've placed my hand on the south-facing bark of a tulip poplar in November and felt it warm and dry. Turned my hand to the north face and felt the cold come up through my palm like iron. That difference tells you exactly which side the ridge is sheltering and which side the wind is working. Site your winter camp on the wrong side and you'll burn twice the wood. Site it right, and the mountain does half the insulating for you. A compass tells you where north is. The bark tells you where north has been pushing for 40 years. Number 8, chinking without mortar. Every old log building I've ever worked on had gaps, not because the builders were careless, because wood moves. It expands in summer and pulls in come winter, and anything rigid you pack into those gaps will crack and fall out within a few seasons. Old Appalachian builders used clay from the creek bank, dried moss packed tight, and sometimes a thin layer of wood ash mixed in. That combination compresses when the logs swell and expands back when they shrink. It breathes with the structure. I patched a 90-year-old outbuilding using the exact same material the original builder left behind. Still good, still in the cracks. I found a hardware store product that crumbled in 2 winters. One bad gap in a wall will cost you more heat than a month of firewood. The mountain already made the right material. You just have to know where to dig. Now I want to stop for a moment. Because what you've just heard, the creek, the bark, the chinking, might sound like 3 separate old tricks. They're not. They're the same skill in different forms. Mountain people survived not because they were harder or stronger. They survived because they noticed trouble while it was still small. A creek sound, a bark temperature, a gap in a wall. None of those are emergencies on their own. But miss all 3 and the emergency finds you instead. The next 3 numbers go deeper into that same logic. Number 7, fire tending, not fire starting. Every survival channel online is obsessed with starting fire. Flint and steel, bow drill, ferrocerium rod. That's the easy part. What nobody teaches is keeping fire through a February night on a quarter of the wood you think you need. The technique is banking. You build a real coal bed, then cover it with ash to hold the heat without burning through your fuel. A banked fire kept right can hold through 6 hours without adding wood. I learned to wake at 3 in the morning not by setting anything but by listening. A fire that's right makes almost no sound. When it starts ticking, small pops, thin crackles, it's telling you the coals are thinning. One split log placed at the right angle against the remaining heat brings it back. Electric blankets work fine, right up until the power goes in the middle of an ice storm. Starting a fire is easy. Keeping it alive all winter without burning your wood pile down in November, That's the skill. Number 6, wet weather tracking. Rain doesn't erase tracks, it ages them. That's the difference between knowing an animal was somewhere and knowing when. A track pressed into red clay before a rain will have soft, collapsed edges and standing water in the deepest part of the print. A track made after the rain will have clean, sharp edges and no pooling. Leaf debris falls back into a track during rain. If the debris is sitting on top of dried mud, that track is older than it looks. I used this once to find a calf that had gotten through a fence. The tracks showed she'd moved before the overnight rain, which put her uphill and east of where she'd been penned. Found her in under an hour. In a food-scarce winter, knowing whether the deer in that hollow moved 6 hours ago or 6 minutes ago determines whether you move now or wait for morning. Number 5, saltless preservation. Salt preservation is real. So are mason jars, but they're not the oldest layer. Before those, Appalachian families used smoke, ash coating, and the cold air management of a spring house, a low stone structure built over a cold creek or spring, where the moving air and constant ground temperature kept things below 50 degrees year-round without ice or electricity. Hickory smoke carries compounds that slow bacterial growth on the surface of meat. Ash coating on cured pork creates a barrier that keeps insects off and moisture stable. The spring house kept the temperature steady through August. I've seen sides of pork stored that way come out after 4 months with no spoilage. Neighbors who depended entirely on a chest freezer lost 3 seasons of food in a 2-day power outage. The mountain keeps cold air. It keeps it in the same places, season after season. The refrigerator just made people forget how to find it. Let me be straight with you. Every skill from number 10 to number 5 requires nothing you can run out of, nothing with a battery, nothing you have to order and wait for. That's not nostalgia, that's engineering. The people who built these techniques lived where the store was 2 days away and the neighbor was a mile down a creek bed. They did not have the option of a fragile system. Ask yourself seriously what happens in your life if the power is out for 30 days. The next 4 numbers are different. They're not techniques, they're ways of deciding. Number 4, knowing when to sit still. The instinct when something goes wrong in the mountains is to move, do something, cover ground. That instinct kills people. I was caught once on a ridgeline in fog so thick I couldn't see my own boots clearly. My first pull was downhill, toward what I assumed was the trail. I sat on a flat stone instead, ate something cold, stayed put. 2 hours later, the fog broke, and 30 yards downhill from where I'd been about to walk was a drop I couldn't have survived. Moving through uncertain terrain at uncertain hours compounds the risk faster than almost anything else. The mountain doesn't reward urgency, it punishes it. The mountains have been here a long time. They'll wait you out. Number 3, water timing, not water finding. Finding water in Appalachia is rarely the problem. Every hollow has a creek, every ridge has a seep. The real skill is knowing when to trust a source and when to leave it alone. I've passed springs so clear and cold they looked like glass, and left them untouched because the mud around the edge showed no animal tracks, no insect activity on the surface, nothing living in or near the water. That kind of quiet around a spring in summer means something is wrong with it. Upstream mineral concentrations, old mining seepage, or organic contamination from a carcass can make water look perfect and be dangerous. The rule I use: if the animals aren't drinking there, I'm not either. A filter straw handles bacteria. It can't tell you whether that source is worth camping near for a week. Your tools treat what's in the water. Your judgment tells you whether to trust the water at all. Every skill in this list works for one reason. Someone practiced it before they needed it, not during the emergency, before it. Bark reading in October isn't survival, it's habit. Banking a fire in November when there's no storm coming is practice. When the storm arrives, the habit is already there.
The last 2 skills on this list are the hardest to learn and the hardest to replace.
Number 2, learning from the oldest person in the hollow. I've read shelves of field manuals. Most of them are correct, and almost none of them are local. A 78-year-old woman I used to know never traveled more than 40 miles from where she was born. Could tell me which side of which hill held frost 3 weeks longer in spring, which creek ran cold enough in August to store butter, and which stand of trees split clean for fence rails versus which ones twisted and cracked. She knew those things because she'd watched the same land for 7 decades. No book carries that, no channel has it. She'd sit on her screen porch shelling beans and give directions using landmarks that hadn't existed for 20 years. An oak tree that came down in a storm, a barn that burned, and every direction was still exactly right. She never called it survival. She called it just knowing things. Find who is still carrying that knowledge where you live. Don't wait. Number 1, the mountain doesn't forgive arrogance.
I expected you to expect a technique here, a knot, a plant, a tool.
What I've come to understand, after a lifetime on these ridges, is that every skill I've described fails the moment the person using it believes they've mastered it. The creek reading fails when you stop really listening and start just glancing. The fire fails when you assume last night's method works tonight without checking. The water fails when you take it because it looks right instead of because everything around it says it's right. The mountain runs on physics and patience. It does not accommodate confidence that hasn't been earned fresh each time. I come back to that creek crossing from the beginning of this video. I know now what the old man heard that day, but I still stop and listen every time, because the one time I don't will be the time the sound is different again. The reason these skills may die with my generation isn't that they're too hard to learn. It's that nobody slowed down long enough to sit with someone who still knew them. When the last person who knows something dies without passing it on, it doesn't go into a book, it just goes. Pick one skill from this list, not the easiest one, the one that feels most useful to where you actually live. Learn it before you need it. Leave a comment telling me which one you'd bring back first, and whether there's someone in your life still carrying this kind of knowledge. Knowledge weighs nothing, needs no batteries, and works best right when everything else has stopped.